The first sound I remember isn't laughter. It's the sharp smack, like wood hitting skin, and then my little brother's scream. I was in the backyard, just a few steps away, trying to enjoy a quiet afternoon, when chaos erupted in broad daylight. HOA Karen, blonde hair perfectly coiffed, red blouse screaming "I'm in charge here," was leaning over the fence like some kind of suburban predator. "Get back on your side, kid!" she yelled, her voice cracking like glass. Before I could process it, I saw her shove my brother's head against the wooden fence. Not gently. Hard enough that the thud echoed across our cul-de-sac. I froze, heart hammering. My neighbor's dog barked as if to protest, but it didn't stop Karen. "Hey, what the hell?" I shouted, sprinting forward. Karen turned, eyes wide with that fake innocence Karen smile that makes your skin crawl. "He shouldn't be here. This is private property," she snapped, pointing at the space between our yards. Private property? Our yard? The fence was clearly shared, but arguing with a Karen never works. I grabbed my brother's arm, checking for injuries. Red mark. Tears streaked down his face, but he could still breathe. "Thank God." "You need to back off," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my stomach was tied in knots. "He's a kid. He wasn't doing anything." Karen's nostrils flared. "I pay HOA dues. I have rules. You all need to respect them, or I'll—" Her sentence ended in a frustrated squeal as she gestured wildly. A bird exploded from the top of the fence, startled. Even nature seemed to judge her. I wanted to yell more, but before I could, she stormed inside her house, slamming the door like a dramatic finale. My brother whimpered, hiding behind me, and the suburban street went silent, as if it had just witnessed a small war. I knelt down, brushing his hair from his forehead. That was insane," I said quietly. My brother nodded, too shaken to speak. I called our mom immediately. She promised to come over but reminded me to stay calm. Easy to say when your child just got slammed against a fence by a Karen with delusions of power. I paced the backyard, replaying the scene. How could someone lose all sense of decency so fast? The neighbors peeked through blinds, murmuring, but no one stepped in. Typical. Everyone loves a quiet spectacle, until it becomes their problem. Then, my phone buzzed. It was my brother's friend's mom. "Did you see what she just did?" Her message was short, panicked. Apparently, Karen had also tried blocking kids from accessing the street entirely, claiming it was private. I felt the first twinge of anger, not just at the fence incident, but at the audacity of this woman. And I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. I glanced back at the fence, hands clenched, heart still racing. That red blouse, that shout, that thud. Something inside me snapped, and then I remembered. My brother's friend's dad works in HOA internal affairs. He has connections, knowledge, and, well, if anyone could make Karen regret this, it would be him. The wheels were starting to turn, and I had no idea how messy it was about to get. By the time my mom arrived, the neighborhood had resumed its usual Sunday haze. Lawns trimmed, sprinklers sprinkling, kids on bikes, but the tension in our yard hung like a storm cloud that refused to move. My brother clung to her like a lifeboat, while I paced, phone in hand, typing a message I never thought I'd send. "Need backup. HOA issue. Serious." Within 30 minutes, my brother's friend's dad, Mark, pulled into our driveway. He wasn't your typical neighbor. Crisp collared shirt, sensible shoes, the kind of man who radiates authority without raising his voice. I could practically feel Karen's impending doom in the air. I explained the incident, keeping my voice steady, but Mark's eyes narrowed at the word, fence. "She pushed him against a fence?" he asked, disbelief mixing with that dry, no-nonsense tone. "Yes. Hard. Right there," I said, pointing. "And she's been threatening kids with the street, too. We tried reasoning, but you know, Karen." He nodded, as if confirming something he already knew. "Okay, first step, documentation. Photos, messages, witness statements. This isn't just gossip, it's a record." We started snapping pictures, capturing everything. The scuffed wood, my brother's scraped shoulder, and even the way Karen's blinds were trembling as if she sensed the walls closing in. Mark pulled out his tablet and began drafting a formal HOA complaint. "Rule violations," he muttered, scrolling through HOA codes. "Trespassing, intimidation, and if she's claiming the street, that's another legal nightmare." He glanced at me. "Ever hear the phrase, 'Don't poke the bear with connections'?" I snorted, trying to hide my mix of fear and excitement. No, but I'm about to. We gathered statements from nearby neighbors who'd seen snippets of the chaos. Their initial hesitation melted when Mark calmly explained the seriousness of the situation. If she's harassing children, this escalates fast, he said. After an hour, Mark leaned back, fingers steepled. I've got the HOA board on speed dial. Let's just say Karen's about to get an official visit. His smirk was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I felt it in my bones. By late afternoon, we were ready. My brother, now cautiously optimistic, stayed close to me. The air felt electric. Something big was coming. And sure enough, across the street, the blinds of Karen's house twitched. I swear I saw her silhouette pacing, red blouse like a warning flare, then a honk. Mark's truck had stopped near her driveway. Out stepped two official-looking HOA representatives, clipboards in hand. They didn't knock, they just walked up like sharks circling. Karen froze mid-step, her dramatic flourish lost to the sudden, silent power of authority. "Good afternoon, ma'am," one of them said, calm but firm. "We received multiple reports regarding property violations and harassment of minors. We're here to discuss." Her face shifted through every shade of red, white, and disbelief imaginable. She stammered, searching for control. Mark's voice cut through, casual but deadly. "Karen, relax. Let's just go through the facts." And in that moment, I realized the gloves were off. Because Karen had no idea that once the HOA internal affairs started their engines, there would be no stopping what came next. The next morning, the neighborhood seemed quieter than usual. But it was a false calm. I could sense it even before I saw her. HOA. Karen was pacing in her driveway, arms flailing, muttering to herself like the world had personally wronged her. The red blouse looked even sharper under the sun, a warning sign that this was about to get ugly. Mark had called ahead to the HOA board, and I knew they were coming in force. But Karen wasn't just going to accept facts, she was going to fight every single one of them. And of course, in her mind, she was right. As the first board members approached, she slammed the door open. "This is an outrage," she shouted, voice bouncing across the cul-de-sac. "You can't just come here and—" "Ma'am," said the senior HOA representative, calm and unshakable. "We've received multiple verified complaints. We're here to review the violations and discuss next steps." Karen's hands shook, not with fear, but with rage. "Violations? My property, my rules!" Mark stepped in, voice quiet but cutting. "Karen, you physically harmed a child. That's not a rule. That's criminal behavior." The words hung in the air like a punch. Her face went pale for a split second before the storm returned. She started flailing, pointing at the fence, at the neighbors watching from behind blinds, at me. "I pay dues. I follow rules. You can't. He provoked me." Her argument dissolved in real time, because somewhere in the background, a neighbor's phone started recording. Another voice chimed in. "Ma'am, we saw it. The shove against the fence, on camera." Karen froze. Her eyes darted around, looking for some escape hatch, some loophole she could cling to. There was none. Every word, every flinch, every erratic gesture was documented. Mark leaned closer to me, whispering dryly, "She's cracking faster than I expected." Then, she did something even more spectacular. She tried to storm off, but one of the HOA reps blocked the door. "We need to finish this conversation, ma'am." I stood there, heart racing, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Because even though Karen's initial control was gone, the fallout was only beginning, and I had a front row seat. Karen's meltdown was cinematic. She screamed, pointed fingers, accused neighbors of lying, and even called me a liar right to my face. But with every second, the credibility she thought she owned dissolved. And when the board calmly laid out fines, restrictions, and potential legal consequences, her knees buckled, not physically, but in the way her authority over the street and neighborhood evaporated. At one point, she paused mid-sentence, breathing heavily, realizing that the world wasn't bending to her whims. And in that pause, I felt a mix of awe and disbelief. The woman who had slammed my brother's head on a fence just days ago was now reduced to a panicked, sputtering version of herself. Mark shot me a look, half warning, half triumphant. "We're not done," he said, and I knew he was right. Karen had crossed a line, and once internal affairs starts digging, it doesn't stop until every violation is accounted for. As the board escorted her back inside for the final review, Karen's voice carried across the yard one last time. "You'll pay for this." By evening, the neighborhood had transformed into a quiet war zone. Lawns were pristine, kids were cautiously circling on bikes, and yet, every house seemed to hold its breath. Karen's house, in particular, radiated tension like a storm waiting to break. Windows shut tight, curtains drawn, but from the faint cracks I could hear her muttering, plotting, cursing under her breath. Mark had stayed behind with me and my brother, making sure everything was properly documented. Once internal affairs digs in, they don't just issue warnings. They follow the paper trail, the fines, the complaints. "She's toast," he said, flipping through the folder of photos, witness statements, and neighborhood testimonies. His tone was casual, almost like discussing sports, but I could feel the weight behind it. Karen was about to feel the full force of consequences. Suddenly, a notification pinged on my phone. HOA board meeting minutes. Karen's violations had been officially recorded, multiple warnings for harassment, fines for property intimidation, and, most damning, documented evidence of physically harming a minor. My stomach twisted. The reality hit. This wasn't just karma. This was the law, the system, and my brother's incident had sparked it all. Hours later, I saw her car creep out of the driveway. Red blouse, face pale, sunglasses hiding a defeated glare. She drove slowly down the street as if hoping someone might sympathize, or worse, intervene. No one did. Even her allies were silent. The whispers of neighbors who had recorded her meltdown, the HOA's official letters, the cameras. Everything was closing in. Then came the calls, from lawyers, from HOA administrators, from angry neighbors. Karen tried to claim misunderstandings, misinterpretations, even self-defense. But every argument crumbled. Mark had anticipated every word, every loophole, and strategically countered it. She was drowning in paperwork and proof, and the fear in her eyes was real this time, not the fake outrage she wore like armor. By nightfall, our yard was quiet again. My brother was asleep, tucked in safely, finally free of the terror that had haunted him that afternoon. I sat outside, watching the stars, thinking about how quickly chaos can erupt, and how sometimes, having the right people on your side changes everything. A notification buzzed again. This time, it was an email from the HOA. Karen's access to community privileges had been suspended, fines were finalized, and an official review board had been set to ensure no further harassment occurred. She had been exposed, cornered, and her reign of intimidation had ended. I couldn't help a small, bittersweet laugh. Justice doesn't always feel cinematic. But today it had. The neighborhood would talk. Whispers would spread. But one thing was clear. Red blouses and unfounded authority had met their match. I looked over at my sleeping brother and felt a surge of relief. And maybe a little satisfaction. Karen had slammed her fists, slammed our lives into chaos, and tried to control everything around her. But in the end, the truth, persistence, and a little internal affairs magic had slammed right back, right? And somewhere, deep down, I knew the legend of HOA Karen would echo through the cul-de-sac for years. But this time, she'd be the one everyone whispered about, not feared. The fence still stood, weathered but unbroken. And so did we. If this story hit home, tap like, because ordinary people standing up can make extraordinary change. Subscribe to Karen Edition to catch every tale of real justice in action. And tell me below, how would you handle a Karen crossing the line?